give a shit to.
Well, I give a shit every day. It's just different days or.
Oh, I love it.
What chapters are we doing?
We're doing chapters 9 and 10 today. Even if you haven't read it, you'll go, ow. And these are really two good chapters based on sales practice, because even though you're in real estate, you're really in sales.
Everybody sells themselves. That's what we do.
Yeah. I did it for almost 30 years.
And then next
Selling
week
myself.
we'll do chapters 11 and 12 and what? Yeah, it is. It's called Dominant Thoughts.
That's what the book's
And
called.
then we will there's some other stuff in the book you'll like, but we'll do 11 and 12 according to what I looked up on Kindle. Then we'll kind of move on to something else after next week, and I'll figure that out today. And today Tracy's in charge of everything.
Because we didn't think Greg was going to be here, so I tried to bone up. We do expect Greg to jump in at any time.
That's right.
But he's good at it.
Yes.
We want him to do that. So chapter 9 says pay attention. I really wanted to say just shut up and listen. Because in the premise in this chapter, Nick got promoted. He's the head of the sales team and their numbers have been great. And all of a sudden everything plummets. What's the problem? So he goes to his mentor. They discuss it and he says, are you paying attention to what they're not saying? When you talk to their clients, are you paying attention to what they're not saying? Which means, even though you may be giving your sales pitch, which is the next chapter, you need to stop and listen. Because if you continue to interrupt, if you continue to give your pitch, you've lost them.
Can I give a perfect example of what you just said?
Yes.
Last night, I was showing a new client, I don't know, $550,000 house. And she was, she had told me she's from Colorado Springs, which she's a referral. And she said her price range started at 500. And I said, okay. So I verified. I said, does it start at 500 or go up to 500? But anyway, she's got a house in Colorado Springs worth a lot of money and it's paid for. Okay, so I'm listening and I'm thinking, okay, we don't have a problem here. She wants to pay cash. Well, then we're going through the house of $750,000 house. And I said, well, on 1 to 10, what is this? And she said, it's a 10. I said, okay, what direction do you want to go? She says, well, I have to wait for my settlement from my rec to come in to pay cash. And I was like, oh, that's not what you said originally. And that's not where my head went. But I didn't ask enough questions because I had made the assumption that she was going to have the cash out of her house. And now all of a sudden we've got another layer to it. So it'll be, a couple of months before she.
Ouch.
Right. Now, a lot of you may not realize I do have an extensive sales background. I sold radio for the Eagle Group in Hutch. I have sold television for Channel 3. I have sold new and used cars at 2 different lots.
Oh, I'm really sorry.
I know, right? That's terrible.
I didn't
But,
work for my hubby, or you'd love it.
it's one of those things. What do you do when you get out of radio? You go into sales, because really that's what I did for over 30 years is sell myself and sell to the clients and sell to the listeners. But even with that being said, how do you get with people? Granted, you've got to ask some probing questions that get them to start talking. Don't interrupt them. The more that you stay silent, the more you will win and learn more. What is their body language? What are they not saying? So
What's the old adage? He who speaks
first loses. I know that there's so much that you want to tell them about this, that, these, and those, but you're not learning from them by letting them speak.
Let me jump in just a minute.
See, I
Not
knew you would.
interrupting you.
No, I like that.
That old adage of he who speaks first loses is something I've used all my career when I'm negotiating with another agent. So all this stuff isn't necessarily just client driven. It's also how you communicate with the other agents. Sometimes if you just shut up, the other agent will talk themselves into a corner
Ding, ding,
and
ding.
your negotiations are over.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing how if you stay silent, that uncomfortable moment, the other person will start talking and throw up all over you and tell you everything you've ever wanted to know about everything,
Mhm.
including their medical history. But that again is going to help you serve them better, understand their needs, and get to the root of what they weren't telling you to begin with.
And that's true, because last night I sat here in the office with that lady and I asked her questions and she told me about her house. She told me the reason she wasn't going to move for a couple of months is because there was a gentleman friend that's in hospice and she has to wait for him to pass. And, she said everything except for that wreck.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until after we were out there looking, and I couldn't get a word in edgewise. I mean, I just listened. I
Yeah.
was like, she probably
Oh.
thought I was the biggest bitch in the world because I was like, I can't say anything. You won't stop talking.
Mm.
But that's what you want. You
Right.
asked enough probing questions and then you shut up and let her throw up all over you. And
she
you
did.
learned way more than if you had taken the lead. I mean, now, granted, you're still in control because you stopped talking.
Right, because you're learning. Like I learned
Right.
yesterday, she's a health fanatic. And I'm like, okay. So she doesn't want to live near a pond because that's a mosquito infested, and she doesn't want this because of that. And, then we found the $750,000 house has a pool. She said, well, I'm gonna have to put a fence up because of my granddaughter. And I said, well, there's an electric cover. She said, oh, we could do that. I mean, everything was safety and health. And she had to have a garden and she had to have a big enough yard for, I mean, so yeah, she was throwing up all over me.
Yeah.
I sat there and I looked at my 4 pages of questions that I
Yes.
normally
Yeah.
ask. And I literally didn't have to ask any of them because she
Mhm.
told me all about it.
Right. Now, have you guys ever gone into, which I know you have, a CE class down at the board? And there's a lot of people that you don't know. I mean, there's 2,000 realtors here in Wichita alone. If you stop and observe everybody in that class and you watch their demeanor, watch and listen to what they say, you'll know about everybody very quickly. The ones that are, interested in what's going on, the ones that are there because they have to be and don't give a shit because they're staring at their phone or they're stepping out to take a call real quick. The ones that are engaged will speak up. They sit at the front of the class. They are intermingling. And then you'll have the ones that will sit at the way back and say nothing. But it's their demeanor. It's what you're observing that will tell you so much if you pay attention.
I'll go a step further. I would almost say introvert versus extrovert, which you get in classes. I used to, my favorite coach used to say, I want to hire somebody. And they said, where's their Facebook page? And I would tell them they'd go look, and just by looking at the pictures and the stuff in it, she'd come back and say whether they're an ABC, whatever personality type. They won't fit good in this job. They will fit good in this job.
Mhm.
You can tell a lot of things just by looking at the expression on people's face, kind of pictures they post before you ever get with them to figure out what they're talking about.
Yeah, it's almost like cheating. You have that reference.
Yep.
Well, it's funny. The book in this particular chapter references a sales guy going to sell a pool to a mom. This mom has a gazillion kids. The phone's ringing, one's yakking, the other one's screaming. The baby wakes up, and he's trying to tell her all the fantastic advantages of owning your own pool, and all the neighbor kids are going to be over, and it's going to be wonderful. He didn't pay attention to the surroundings, what she was doing, what was going on. He could have said very little and gone, like it says in the book, oh my gosh, this pool would be your relaxation time, your time away from the chaos. But he didn't shut up and pay attention to what was going on around him for that client. Because she just wanted to break. Please don't bring over all the neighbor kids too. I can't handle what I've got. But again, he didn't pay attention to the environment, to the surroundings, what was going on. He was too focused on his sales pitch. And I've got to do A, B, and C in order to get the sales pitch. And this is what I've got to do. Great. Use that as your skeleton of potential ways to get through something. But you've got to read the room, read your client, step back and listen, pay attention and watch, and you'll know how to interact with them to create the sale.
And I'll jump in again. Sorry.
No, please.
So in the old days when I was with Wygan, we had to create, and I've still got it in there, a leather book with my listing presentation in it, page by page by page by. And I learned very quickly that I was very proud of that book and wanted to show it off. And most of the clients they didn't want to see page by page. And you guys all know, if you're making a listing or a presentation to an engineer versus, I don't know what other, an entertainer, an engineer is going to want all the numbers and the graphs and the spreadsheet. And that's what they want to see. And an entertainer is going to want you to make them happy and dance and entertained. So you have to tailor what you're doing by paying attention to your surroundings to be able to give what they need.
Can I say something?
Please.
Sure.
My husband and I are both salespeople, as we all know. And we're remodeling our house over in Pawnee Park. And my husband decided to have a salesperson come over and get a quote on how much it would cost to take our double jacuzzi tub out of the master bedroom and put in a new shower. Okay, so removing a double tub and putting in a new shower. Okay, we're both analytical to an extent. We're both task oriented. Let me rephrase that. I'm a bottom line person. My husband's more analytical. So if he wants more information, he will ask. But because we're task-oriented people, we needed him to say, this is what we provide.
Yeah.
We've been in the business this long. We've got this many happy customers, and this is what it's going to cost. Okay, sum total of 15, 20 minutes. For 2 hours, we sat there.
Oh, God. Kill me.
And the first hour was how wonderful his company was.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I was sitting there going, just looking
Right.
at him like, are you?
You're a D. You're a D and your husband's a C.
Mhm.
And if he knew how to read people, he would have skipped 90% of the crap
And
and
you would have.
bottom lined you.
Okay, so ultimately, this is the great part. Ultimately, we finally said, okay, what's it going to cost? $20,000.
Right.
You said
Save
no.
2 hours. Yeah. I think that's exactly what this chapter's talking about, though.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Exactly. And my husband, I laughed after he left. He said, boy, he didn't know how to read the room at all. I mean, we are both sitting there going like, get to the bottom line,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah.
Well, and he could have told by your posture,
Yes.
the look on your face, the
Mhm.
rolling of the eyes,
He was
but
all of it.
he was taught, I have to do A, B, and C. I've got to toot my horn.
Yeah.
I've got to tell them about the company. I've got to A, B, and C.
The old ways. Mhm.
It's a great skeleton to use
Mhm.
to keep you on track, but A may work, but you need to skip down to E, depending on your client, depending on the room, depending on the surroundings, what you're picking up. And you can only do that when you shut up.
Well, that's your story is a good segue into the next chapter.
It is.
Too.
Well, thanks.
You're welcome. Because I just got a text from the Water League people and I have to run back to the HOA. But I
Oh.
told them it'd be
Mhm.
45
Nice
minutes
seeing.
before I got there. So
Oh,
I'm going to hang out for
That's
another
really good.
15, 20 minutes.
appreciate that.
Mhm.
Well, and that does
Bottom
segue
line
into the
was
next
that-
chapter, which actually I think is very
I mean, I've
important.
got
Under promise
2 more
and
chapters,
over
but after
deliver. And they kind of premise of, again, the whole typical sales routine that you've been taught, that's been hammered into you. But again, use it as a skeleton. I don't need to know, no client does, all of these, I'm going to do this and the company's going to do this and it's going to be fabulous and da da da. And then it doesn't turn out the way you'd planned, you'd hope. There's always a monkey wrench in there somewhere getting thrown in. And all of those huge promises and everything you've boasted about just went to crap. It just flowed away, you know? And so now you've got a disappointed client that you haven't delivered on. Now, do you go in and say, you know, the bare basics? This is what our company does, and we stand with you, and this is what you can expect. Bare basics. You don't go in to, I'm going to do this and this and this and this. That's the icing on the cake. That's what's going to help you under promise and over deliver. When you stick with them and you call them once a week and you check in on them, and you know, you've done something over and above for this client. You've helped them paint that wall to prepare to list the house. That's not something that you would put in the presentation that you're willing to do. That's a bonus. So keep it the bare minimum. Give them, you know, the company story or your story. You don't have to sit there and boast and brag and tell them all these wonderful things you've done for other clients, because then they're going to expect that. And if this particular situation doesn't work out, well, then they're disappointed.
I'll even go to the positive side. How many people read the story of the diner they were in?
The what?
The diner in
Rosie's,
this,
the
it's
diner.
premised in the diner.
So in a nutshell, they went into a place that looked like the Doodah Diner. If you've ever been there, it's a wonderful food place and so on. But you don't go in and get linen and, you know, people dancing around in short black skirts and sparklies and
No Hooters?
No Hooters.
yeah, that.
Or Pete.
So they go into this place. It's absolutely packed. They barely have a seat. Before they sat down, they had water at the table, and the next thing that came out was a fruit plate and something else.
Pastries.
Pastries. They said, wait a minute, I didn't even order yet. Nope, they always bring those out before you order, and they don't charge for them. Well, what do you mean they don't charge? So it was the experience of pleasantly surprised, exceeding what a normal restaurant would do. They didn't have to tell the story. People
No.
live the story.
Well, and it even goes on to say that there was nothing out front that said best breakfast in town or cheapest or the biggest portions. They didn't have to boast and brag about that.
Word of mouth.
They just put it in front of you and let you make your own decision on that. You know, and that's why they had the repeat customers. That's why they had the word of mouth, because they underpromised and over delivered on their service, on their food, on their portions, their pricing. And that can be carried over into any sales position.
And I will say there's a balance between selling yourself and overselling yourself. Now, Lynn was a prime example. They were telling them everything they could ever possibly want to know about it. And if I gave you a few things that you wanted to know, and then I told you the price, and you said not no, but you know, okay, well, that's a problem. But at the same token, if I told you some things and you said, well, what about this? What about that? Now I'm responding to their questions rather than overselling them. I'm answering what's important to them.
That was a really good example of
Mhm.
exactly what you should not do.
Right.
Yeah.
And do
right.
you know, I love going to like used car lots or something like that and watching the salespeople. You know, it's I really, and I always learn from it, whether it's great service or not. It's just watching other people in their profession doing it.
Mel Hambleton, my daughter bought a car from them because I've got family that work there. And she lives in Texas, but when she needs her car detailed and oil changed, she comes back to Wichita
Mhm.
to go to Mel Hambleton.
That's good.
Because
Really
of the
good.
service.
Yes,
Mm.
because of the service.
They under promise, over deliver.
It reminds me of a story some instructor told me years ago, 20 years ago. And back then it was before Uber and whatnot. It was taxis. But this guy was a taxi driver, but he kept a cooler on the back seat with cold, water bottle and pop. And he always had a rose to hand to the women, and just his service. His vehicle was clean and smelled nice. And I mean, he was able as a taxi driver to work off of referral. He would hand them a card and say, here's my number, call me when you want me to pick you up. It was like their own personal limousine. That's going above,
Yes.
and beyond.
And really, he didn't have to under promise, because you think taxi,
Yeah,
oh, I'm gonna get a ride from some guy and I hope the seats
Yeah,
aren't sticky,
yeah.
but he over delivered. It's like there's been several times, and why I keep going back to Panera in the morning to get my iced tea. There's gonna be 2 or 3 cars in front of me. They're getting sandwiches, they're getting the big thing of bagels, and I have to wait for my iced tea. Never once have they promised me that I could skip the line.
Mm,
They just allow it by walking out and handing me my iced tea so that I can drive on and not have to wait to pull up.
that's cool.
And you're going,
That-
did you get it for free? I'm on the SIP club, so I've already paid for it. But it's that service that keeps me going back, that continues my membership for $12 a month to get my iced tea, because they under promise, over deliver.
That's neat.
They didn't come out and say, we'll deliver it to your car. Then when they don't
Yeah,
deliver it
yeah.
to your car,
And that's
Mhm.
really frustrating.
There's a book called Raving Fans. And it's
That's called what?
Raving Fans.
Okay.
It's exceptional. It's a great book.
Yeah.
It's how to under promise and over deliver and make raving fans.
One thing that I love about this chapter, on page 80, I don't have my glasses on page 85, is
I don't
Thank
know if
you.
those will help.
everyone. Oh, yeah. Everyone has expectations, expressed or not.
Wow, I highlighted that.
And I mean, I teach this. It's like, guys, sometimes they don't even know what they want. So you ask them, what do you not want? They always know what they don't want.
Right.
But get to the
That's a
bottom
good
of
question.
expectations, what would be an ideal transaction for you here? What would make this the most perfect experience? And asking them, because it may look different than what I would consider.
Right.
So getting that from them, get clear on expectations.
Well, and that's a very good beginning phase of setting those expectations. I can tell you, here's what you can expect from me. Again, don't overdo it.
Mhm.
Don't oversell it. Just say, you can expect me to take care of the paperwork, to make the appointment for the appraiser, to do this, and to be in contact with you. Now, what are your expectations of how you want this to go? I mean, whether you've ever been in real estate, you've ever sold or bought a house, what do you think? Because everyone already has some form of expectation in their mind of how they'd like this to go. So ask them. And if they say they don't know, it'll be rare that they would. They'd at least give you 1 or 2 things
I
that
think-
you can ask more questions of to discover.
From Africa.
What was that?
That was a Tulio, wasn't it?
No, that was Ray.
Right.
Oh,
What's that?
that was cute.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. So this is a rather longer story, but I'll try to keep it short. When I go to other towns and airports, I will almost always get a black car, a limo, whatever you want to call it, rather than an Uber or a taxi from the airport. I find the prices aren't that different. But once, when my mom was alive in the early 2000s, we were all going to Europe. And our plane was late getting into Chicago. And so American Airlines put us all up into a hotel until the next day. they had a bus outside that they were loading up to take us to the hotel, which was a fair distance away. And I thought, I know taking a taxi always beats me to the bus. I'm going to get there. I'm tired. I'm done. So we got in a taxi. This is why I do limos now. We got in a taxi, and this was before GPS. This guy barely spoke English, and they had a book of directions about how to get various places. And it took him twice as long to get us there than the bus because he had no idea where he was going or what he was doing. I don't like taxis anymore. My expectation was taxi will get me there faster. I'm willing to pay for that. They know where they're going, and he had no clue whatsoever. My expectations were crushed. So I haven't liked taxis ever since.
Mhm,
And this one guy ruined it for everybody.
mhm.
That
You don't know what previous realtor may have ruined it for you.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You have to find out what makes
And
it
that's
good, what
another,
makes
ask
it
them what
bad.
their experience has been, have you sold a home before? And yeah, that's a really good way of learning expectations, is asking about their experience.
Well, and with expectations, I like what they said in here is when you're presenting, tell them the unconditionals. These are things you're going to get whether you like it or not. Yeah. You're,
Right.
the unconditionals with our company, the unconditionals with you, and you can make it brief. Again, don't overboast, don't oversell, don't overbrag, but you can, these are things you're going to get regardless. You're going to get the listing, you're going to get the marketing, you're going to have me at your side for any question that you need. I'm going to be there, but these are things that you're going to get regardless. But that again sets an expectation without overselling. You're still going to over deliver on some of that down the road.
So let's take listing as an example. I like that. I'm going to list your house and I'm going to get it sold fast, and we're going to close in about 45 days because I'm really good. Okay, how are you going to market it? Well, we've got a number of ways that we market it. Some's on the internet, some's the MLS, so on. And if that seller then comes back and says, well, what about open houses? Do you answer that question directly, or do you ask them another question?
I'm a direct person.
Hmm?
I'm a direct person. If I feel like I'm being manipulated, it pisses me off.
Well, see, I would, if they asked me about open houses, I would say, do you go to open houses now?
I answer the question.
And let them talk about it.
Mhm.
You could, and they say no. Well, if you don't go there, why were you asking about it? Well,
Hmm.
because our last realtor did 7 of them and it didn't work. Okay, now I'm getting more information
Mhm.
instead of hitting them with something
Yeah.
they
Right.
may
I
not
see what
want
you're
yet.
saying. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Mhm.
You're giving them that moment when you ask another question
Mhm.
and you're silent. You're giving them that moment to start to throw up that information on you so that you can go, oh, okay. So you're not a big thing on the open houses. We'll cross that bridge if we need to come to it, but we have these tools in place to where we may not even have to have an open house, but let's cross that bridge when we come to it.
So just like the pool salesman,
Right.
how do I find out why they want a pool or why they don't? Is
Yeah.
it relaxation? Or is it, so all the kids in
Exactly.
the neighborhood will come over? I got to know which question I'm answering.
Right.
That's literally why I developed this 4 pages of questions. I sit down with my buyers now and ask them because I don't naturally know how to peel back the onion. That doesn't come to me naturally. I'm more of a direct person
Mhm.
and I answer the question and let's move on, which I found helpful in a lot of ways, but it didn't dive deep enough for me
Yeah.
to be able to
Right.
really circle back to it if I need to.
Why? Why
know
is
why.
the best
Mhm.
word in the world
Well-
on those interview consultations?
And I have done hundreds, and I literally mean this, hundreds of interviews. Some people, I can ask one question and I don't have to say another word
Right.
for the next 5 minutes. Then there are the ones that the interview is like pulling teeth
Mhm.
and you're like, give me something to work with.
Open-ended questions, huh?
But I never And if it works for you to have a list of questions, great. But I've never in my life had a list of questions on any interview I've done because I shut up, I pay attention, I listen, and their answer to my first question may lead me down a whole nother rabbit hole that I had no idea we'd go down.
A lot of times what I find with my questionnaires is when I ask 1 or 2 questions, then they open up and I fill out 3 or 4 or 5 more questions.
Right.
Just listening to them. So it's
So again, you can
right,
relate to the point of you may have to start at A. That doesn't mean you're automatically going to go to B.
right,
You may have to jump to E,
right.
but you've got to pay attention to the atmosphere, the surroundings, the people there. Are they making eye contact at all? Are they checking their phone too much? Are they constantly shifting, moving?
Yeah.
They're
that was me.
uncomfortable. Watch the body. Right. Yeah, go for it. But it's watching that body language and paying attention. You got to almost, instead of going in with that plan, bye, Greg,
Bye, Greg.
you know, and this is how I've got to do it because this is how it's done and this is how I've been taught. Be flexible
Yeah.
and go in with the excitement of you have no idea what road this is going to take, but I'm excited to find out. But I can only do that if I pay attention to the room, listen, and let them talk.
You know, the thing about it, that incident that I had, and this is going down a rabbit hole, sorry, but
You're fine.
he was giving me the sales pitch of how it was going to add value to my house
$20,000 worth.
for a
Did he know you were a real estate agent?
yeah. And I looked at him, I said, don't go there with me, please.
Goodness.
Is it going to add $20,000 of value to my house?
I said, in other parts of the country, you might get away with that, but not in Wichita. It is not going to add that much value. I said, and I kind of insulted that you would take me there.
Right.
Was he young?
No, he was my age.
Was he a drinker?
I should have asked.
Does anybody online have anything to add, to say, to
Hello,
cricket?
Erica, Francesca.
I had to get my screen back to unmute.
Ah.
I would say, earlier you were talking about, bringing up open houses, and I like to have that discussion with them. I don't mind doing open houses. I mean, yes, we like to think that we're going to pick up maybe a new client from them, but very rarely does that happen these days. Or at least in my experience. But that's when I have that conversation with them and I talk to them. If they are somebody that says, I'd really just prefer people come through with their agent, but if we have to have an open house, then we can, but I really don't want to. So that's when I talk to them about, when do we put the listing on the market? Maybe we put it on a Monday or Tuesday. Usually I say Tuesday because if somebody's having open houses over the weekend, they may be waiting on Monday to get a decision on another offer. So if we put it on Tuesday, then maybe by then they'll have gotten an acceptance or decline from whatever over the weekend. But, a lot of times in the market that we have now, you will get offers that first week if you're, in an average range. So, I'll propose that and say, if you really want to aim to not have an open house, let's try to get it on the market earlier, versus if you want to have a strong open house the first weekend, maybe we wait till, Friday or Saturday to put it on the market. So being able to have those conversations and help the client to understand where you're coming from, that it's not just, well, let's just put it on the market today and see. I mean, sometimes it is, but being able to explain to them, this is why I prefer to do it this way. We can list it whenever you're ready, but this is kind of what I have found works better in the past. What are your thoughts on that? And I think that clients don't necessarily think that far ahead, as far as, they're just thinking, well, we put our house on the market and see what happens.
I think you have a really good point. Erica, in the fact that, we do need to ask the sellers, because I went on an interview the other day and they asked me about open houses, and they were upset with their last agent because they wouldn't hold an open house. And I was able to say, well, I love open houses. I usually pick up a client or two. I didn't tell them that, but the thing that I have found, because I got into business 40 years ago, and open houses and floor time in the office where the calls came in was the only really way to get business back then. Open houses was a way to get clients. Now, what I found in the switch is nowadays, because of the internet, the open house is just a service to the seller, because those people are online looking for open houses,
Right.
and they are going to go to that open house because they actually have a desire to see it, because it holds something for them. They either have the right amenities or it looks good online, but in my opinion, it's a service to the seller to hold the open house, whether you pick up anybody or not. But I held an open house for Elena last Sunday. I had 3 people through, and 2 of them were first-time home buyers that I picked up as clients. So you never know either what the results are going to be, but I really do hold them open more so to help the seller, because when people come to the open houses nowadays, it's because they want to see it.
Absolutely. I feel that way too. And I feel like this listing that I have right now, I've had a few open houses, and several of the neighbors, because the house has been updated and remodeled, mostly inside and out. And the neighborhood that it's in is a great neighborhood up in the Moorings on Crystal Lake. And so I have met a lot of the neighbors. So my goal is that, maybe when I sell it, I send out postcards, just
Yes.
sold, maybe the neighbors will recognize me from having stopped
Right.
by. So I'm looking at it, I do look at it from the seller standpoint of, I just want to get eyeballs on it. And if I pick up a new client or two, fantastic, but I let them know that, it's, the effort is there to try to sell the house is the main goal.
And this could also be, I know that I've listened to agents and I've listened to clients, and sometimes the open house is nothing more than a perception for the seller that you're over delivering.
Yep.
You never promised them you're going to do open houses. You're going to cross that bridge when you come to it, if it's necessary. If it's not something that they're saying, I really want an open house, I have to have an open house. If they're not saying that and they're willing to go along with, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. When you do hold one, you've just over delivered, because you never promised it. But this is something that you think right now, in the scheme of things, is a good time to do it. I want to do more for you, but I'm not going to give you the laundry list of things that I'm going to do. It's just going to be like in the diner, a wonderful surprise. You've gone past my expectations or anything that we discussed in the beginning. So of course I'm going to refer you to someone else. And again, that's just that word of mouth that will continue to build.
Now, there's really 2 schools of thought on this, to be honest with you, because this dominant thoughts has the, under promise, over deliver. I also went through a different coaching program where it says, if you get a referral, tell that referring client, say, I'm going to make a hero out of you by referring me, and then just really go balls to the walls and deliver, which is what I try to do. But on the flip side, I'm really making a big promise. I'm going to make a hero out of you to the referring client, to the person that had the referral. So it could bite me in the butt if I don't over deliver, or if I don't deliver.
100%, because saying that I'm going to make you a hero and I'm going to do this, life happens. You get sick, something comes up, you get distracted, and a week's gone by and you have not delivered on what you boastfully promised. You're now crap. Because you didn't do what you said you would do. So boasting too much about something down the line is probably not in your best interest because it could very easily bite you in the butt because life happens.
You can still do it, just don't tell them.
Right,
Let it be
exactly.
a nice surprise.
Exactly. And that was the whole idea behind the whole diner chapter
Mhm.
is, wow, we didn't even have to ask for this. And my goodness, the plate of food is enormous. And
Mhm.
you didn't care that it wasn't some fancy place, but it was packed because they underpromised and overdelivered.
Mhm.
Makes me want to go practice on somebody. Go practice.
Does anybody else have anything to add or subtract?
Sure, I'll weigh in. Yeah, I can relate to the comment about the bathroom remodel. We had I was replacing windows in my house I moved from several years ago. The first guy that showed up got there at 6:30 at night and left at 10:30.
Oh, God.
He wanted to become our best friends. We talked about anything and everything.
Dear Lord.
Oh, it was ridiculous. I mean, it was when he left, and plus he wanted about $3,000 a window to replace them. It was outrageous. We ended up going with a company literally for a third the cost. And I had two other companies come in and I told them right up front, look, dude, you have 1 hour. In 1 hour, either it's the bottom line or we're done, okay?
That's the
And
way to do it.
It worked well. And then in my previous sales life, you talk about reading the room and body language and reading people. Of course, when you're selling stuff that's really, really expensive and contracts of $300 or $400 million, it takes meeting after meeting after meeting and relationship building. And so what they're talking about here, reading the room, knowing what to say, what not to say, all that came into play, but it was on a, over a 2 or 3 year period typically that
Hmm.
you were having to play that game.
Did you get commission on that, Raymond?
Uh,
200, 300
no.
million?
I wish 1%, you would have never met me.
Right?
Oh,
He would be on the beach.
Anyway.
Francesca, do you have anything?
No, thank you though. I got a lot of great information.
Good. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to add or ask or?
Well, I think I'm going to add this. In order to learn how to read a room, you need to be proficient at reading the personalities, the disc personalities. So if you haven't gone to any of the classes, and I know Cheryl gives some great disc classes, it's the four predominant different personalities and how to interact with them so that you could learn better how to read their body language and what they're saying will help you immensely in your sales career.
Okay. If it works for you, rock on. I can't categorize people. I can't say you're a D and you're an E, and I can't, but because I have had to read the room all of my life and have had to be in the public eye, and in order to navigate and be extremely flexible depending on who I'm talking with. I still do that today, but it's just something that I guess has come over time because no one can, you might be able to say, well, she's a D, but no, I'm all the rest as well. Depending
Mhm,
on who I'm talking to, depending on my situation,
mhm.
I will adapt.
Or at work, at home. Like at work, I'm an extrovert. At home, I'm an introvert. I'm totally different. I'm the opposite.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, you're exactly right. But the thing about that I found helpful in the disc is not necessarily that I'm looking at somebody going, what are you? Because I've had enough years of experience in sales too, that I don't consciously categorize them.
Right. It's just something that
It's-
you've adapted to
Yes,
and
just like you
processed
have.
and learned over
Everybody has a
over
dominant,
time.
You know, or they might be dominant in two areas.
Mhm.
And it's that dominant that you speak to.
It's like being a chameleon, learning how to be a chameleon so that
Right.
you
Oh,
can,
yeah, or a mirror, you
A mirror,
just
yeah.
mirroring, yeah.
Well, and I don't know how many of you have taken a multitude of proficiency or personality tests. I've been tested out my wazoo since I was a little
Me
kid.
too.
And it was so funny that I came out because, as you can tell, most of you would assume I'm an extrovert. I am as equally an introvert. And when those tests came out within 1% of each other, depending on the day, they would make me take it again. Because you can't be. That's impossible. Yeah, it is. It is. But those tests came out the same all the time. So again, pay attention, read the room, listen, and you'll start to get it. It takes a little time, but you will get it. Everybody, thank you so much. Sorry it went a little long. Greg will be back in full force next week on chapters 11 and 12-ish. So we'll see you then.
Okay.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.